Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 1ND podcast. I'm your host, Vikas, joined by my co host, Sagar. And today we're going to be talking about the new Pokemon DLC, first time ever. And I personally haven't played it, but Sagar's played it quite a bit, I believe. We'll get his impressions on it, if he recommends it, what the coolest parts of it, all the shebang.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, so in our previous podcast, you were talking about how you'd really need to be sold on something before you bought another Pokemon game. And I can safely say that you would not be sold on this. It's nothing like out there and amazing, like crazy that wants to bring you back to the game. It's really for those hardcore Pokemon fans who just want to catch like some of their favorite Pokemon, like from previous generations. They like the completionists who want like all the DLC, like all the events, and if you really want that legendary Pokemon, which we can talk about a little bit as well. I think the first thing I want to talk about is just the whole idea of Nintendo switching to DLC, right? Like that's a big step for them. I was reading a few news articles and like some work some people have done, and they were really talking about how Nintendo really wants to go from selling physical copies to digital, and like the idea of switching to this DLC is that eventually they'll implement an all digital system, which I think makes sense, but at the same time, it's also for money, right? They're probably profiting from this immensely. And it's really important to know that when Nintendo releases a project or a product, they've been working on it for at least a year. So, for example, when Pokemon X and Y were announced and they were coming out, they were already working on Pokemon Sun and Moon, right? I mean, Pokemon Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby. And then when those games came out, they were working on Sun and Moon. So they're always like one production step ahead in what they're developing. So what that means really is when Pokemon Sword and Shield came out, this was already in development. And I know there was a lot of controversy about how all the Pokemon were not coming back in the original game. I think it's a genius marketing ploy because you're basically selling people a new feature, which is old Pokemon. And people are going to buy it because, one important thing now that a lot of people are in is competitive. And there's a lot of Pokemon in here that completely changed the meta, along with some new moves. And I think all that combined is a good selling point for it. But for like someone like a casual player, you're not really going to miss much. You're really just catching some new Pokemon and exploring a new island.
For me personally, I didn't mind the fact that the entire Pokedex was not in Pokemon Sword. But like we've said in previous podcasts, Pokemon Sword just felt like this incomplete game that had like little story and little side stories and whatnot, and it just wasn't enjoyable. And it's kind of annoying the fact that I pretty much bought the Nintendo Switch for that game because I hadn't played a Pokemon game since the DS ones, and so it seemed like the advertising obviously was great, right? This thought of an expansive Pokemon world that essentially everyone wanted, right? This free roam type of thing, where free roam in terms of more 3D aspects to it, and for me like I just got unsold on the rest of Pokemon because I think they just wasted that opportunity because Pokemon Sword had so much hype, and I just don't think they really met expectations, in my opinion.
Yeah, not at all. And I will say that it was definitely underwhelming. And what I like about this is that they've done some things to improve the product onto the next generation. The primary one being, how you were talking about free roam. So this entire new area, the entirety of it is free roam. So you can always control the camera angle. You can explore however you want to, and you're not really limited in this like linear sense where you have to go through a route and there's only one way to go and you don't really have control over it. In this environment, it's really open, and that's one of the refreshing things about it. You get that sense of exploration, which I think was missing in the main game other than the wild area. They basically took the wild area, they made it more diverse. They added some new Pokemon, and overall, I will give them credit for that. That turned out really well. I know that the second part of the DLC, which is coming out in, I think, November or December, will actually be slightly larger and it will also be free roam. So I do like that aspect of it. I think it'll be fun, and it makes me excited for the next generation, right? So there's already rumors about like a Pearl and Diamond remake. Hopefully that's true, because that was like one of our favorite generations as well. So let's see. And again, it's all about capturing people's attention. So yeah, this was a pretty big disappointment for you, and you're going to be apprehensive, but I think they can still redeem themselves with the next gen. We'll see how it goes.
Quite possibly, but all I know is I am not getting a Pokemon game off the bat ever again. I'm just gonna wait like maybe a month or two, see how people like it, see a few videos, and then maybe I'll buy it. But that being said, dude, those PS5 videos of like the Miles Morales game, they look amazing. And I feel like if they could get some sort of cinematic quality in from the Diamond and Pearl remake, because Dialga and Palkia, they have a lot of opportunity for that sort of cinematic experience. I think they could capture me. Well, first off, I would love to play a Gen 4 remake, but in general, if they can optimize that sort of stuff and take advantage of the fact that you got a system that's so powerful, not only handheld but on a television, I think they've just got to capture the opportunity the next time around.
And again, I think this is a Game Freak thing as well, because one thing is, did you watch the Pokemon Direct that came out? I think it was the 17th.
I do no supplemental watching of Pokemon.
Okay, yeah. So basically, it was an announcement where they announced a bunch of different things. It was pretty funny because some of the first things they're really trying to get kids from the get go. So they announced this like toothbrush app where like you're holding your phone and you're brushing your teeth, and it's like interacting with Pokemon. It's so weird, and it's honestly kind of unnerving because like they're teaching you to be integrated with the smartphone from like 2 years old. It's insane. But again, they're a company. They're trying to attract as many people as they can, trying to get them young, right? Trying to get them into that system. But one of the things in there that they announced was Pokemon Snap. And Pokemon Snap, I've never played a single one of those games. You said you have and you were a fan.
I loved it.
And it's really interesting for me because, I never played it because I thought it'd be kind of boring. It's like, oh, you're just taking pictures of Pokemon. But again, so many people were hyped about that announcement. Like more so than anything else in there, even that the DLC just came out. And I watched the preview of Pokemon Snap. It's under development. But let me tell you, like, man, like the engine they're using, the graphics engine they're using for that game looks pristine. Like there was this one trailer where like a Primarina was in the water and the water was looking like amazing. And the Pokemon were looking crisp. They had like a life to them. And I think that would be amazing, like graphics that they may want to bring over to the Game Freak side. But again, they're two different companies. I think Bandai Namco is doing Snap, and Game Freak always does Pokemon. So that's the bad news of it. I don't think it'll be that amazing.
I think that was the allure of the original Snap, is that you were essentially ingrained in the world that the Pokemon live in, which is kind of what what children always want. They're like, wow, I wish Pokemon were real. I mean, in the original Pokemon Snap, you're basically on like this little mine cart rolling through and like taking pictures of Pokemon along the way. And obviously, like the previous ones there was no RNG really. Like you would go through and every single time it's the same Pokemon that appear. But
really?
There are a lot of very rare Pokemon that are extremely difficult to capture. And I'm sure like they could create some sort of RNG in this version, which would be frustrating, but would keep people playing the game. And they could do a lot with Pokemon Snap nowadays, especially on the Switch, especially with all these the new technology and whatnot. I'm excited. I'd consider, if it's not like a whole $60 game, I definitely consider buying.
Unfortunately, I think it will be 60. I will say the one thing is, did they have shinies in the original? Because I feel like if there's people trying to take snaps of like shiny Pokemon, like that stuff may like really be insane to try to get those kind of like pictures in the game and stuff. So there's always opportunity there. Yeah, I think it's going to be $60. That's like the standard base price now, which kind of sucks, but it's the reality. And so I think one thing, just getting back to the DLC, like Isle of Armor, was it worth the $30? So my mentality, which I don't know, is just for me. Some people may have a differing opinion on this. I basically value the first part as 15 and the second part as 15, even though you're paying 30 for both, because they're like two different DLCs, but you're getting both for 30. So I'm gonna judge based off like $15 is what I paid for it, and I paid 15 for the second half. And was it worth 15 for me? Yeah, sure. I got to see like a bunch of new Pokemon. One of my favorite Pokemon of all time, Kadabra and Alakazam, were in this like new update, which is super cool. And I really want to try to use them in competitive because they're like, Alakazam is going to be so busted. And with the meta that's currently there, that's going to be interesting as well. I will say that the biggest consequence of adding these Pokemon in Isle of Armor is the meta. Because you can do so many different things now that were not necessarily possible. So one big meta changer is Politoed, I think. Yeah, Politoed. Because it's a good drizzle and rain setter. Because of its ability. And that's going to completely change it. And then Pokemon also changed the rules. So you can use some of those like legendary Pokemon. Like, what's it called? I think it's the Justice Trio or something like that.
Terrakion, Virizion, and Cobalion.
Yeah, those three. So you can use them now. And I know we had a convo about how beat up with it was beat up with Whimsicott, and then you use Articuno that has Justified. It was like an insane strat, and that how Terrakion is Arcanine but like 10 times better. That strategy is gonna come back now. So we'll see what that has like in store.
Well, isn't beat up a new move in this generation?
No, I think beat up has existed for a while, pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
Oh, speaking of that, I think that's a good transition into the new moves they also announced. Which is also pretty interesting, right? Because now, like, again, I really want to emphasize the fact that Pokemon is really focusing on competitive and getting people, like, into the idea of making competitive teams and doing things with competitive Pokemon. Especially with the new moves they announced, where they're really based on, like, very situational things, right? Typically when you announce like new moves, they're pretty like mediocre. Like for example, a new move for Cinderace this generation was Pyro Ball, just a really strong fire attack. But these 17 new moves they announced, one for every type, were very like situational. You would use them in certain situations which you wouldn't really care to set up in the main story. Like you're not going to try to set up an electric terrain to bring in a Pokemon and use this move, right? It would be inefficient in a story. So these moves are really just for competitive use, and it's crazy how much they're still paying attention to it. And that's going to be another fun aspect to play around with. For sure.
I think this entire DLC, if you're a competitive player, you have to get it. Like, there's
100%.
really no way you could well, I don't want to say there's no way you could continue without getting the DLC, because that's, putting limitations on people. But at the same time, you have so many new moves, so many new Pokemon, the entire meta is probably going to change. So if you play competitive Pokemon, this is a necessity. For, let's say, before you move on to the terrains and how interesting the new moves are, for a casual, let's say, a casual player that doesn't really play any competitive Pokemon, would you say that this $15 DLC is worth it?
So great question. I would say, yeah, it is definitely worth it. Just for the reason that you get a decent amount of gameplay and it's just fun. If you like catching Pokemon, which I think is one of the allures of the game itself, and you like finding new species, adding to your Pokédex, challenging different trainers, it's definitely worth it. Like, it's a good, fun experience. Again, the gameplay, I'll get onto later, like the story and stuff in a little bit. But yeah, I would say it's worth it.
Okay, pretty cool.
But for you, since I know you, I know that you really would like to play through something with more story. So it really depends on what you value. So I would say you should definitely buy this if you value the following things. You have a lot of fun completing the Pokédex. You have a lot of fun with some of these Pokemon that are back. Like, there's some of your favorites from like your childhood, like for me, Alakazam. That, like, some Pokemon alone may be worth it for you. You have a lot of fun just exploring, because this whole island is free roam, and it was definitely fun getting to like go around and explore the new areas and do different things. And then yeah, if you just have fun doing those different aspects, definitely worth $15. It is short, I will say. Do you want to touch base on anything before I move on to the story and get into a little bit of the spoilers?
Well, so you were talking about the terrain moves before.
Yes.
Those seem really cool. We were talking about it the other day, and previously terrain was pretty interesting, but somewhat of a I don't want to say gimmick because it was definitely useful, but now it seems like since there are moves that have been made that benefited from weather being out, let's say like a hurricane or anything of that sort, which increases accuracy of the move when rain dance is out or decreases accuracy when when it's sunny day. The terrain moves seem a lot more interesting now and a lot more viable to use terrain based teams in competitive.
It's like a totally like they added a different layer and it's like completely changed what you can do, right? Because so for people who don't know how the mechanic works now is, we have the classic standard weather, right? So you could have a sunny day, you could have your like hailstorm, you could have your sandstorm, and you could have rain. I don't think I missed any there. But now, so the thing with terrains is that they stack on top. So you could have different combinations at play. So you could have like a rain dance, and so it's like there's rain on the field, and at the same time you could have like an electric terrain. So you could like make multiple different combinations. So it's like I don't know how many terrains there are, but say like 20 to 30.
Anything that doesn't have like that isn't covered by rain, sun, sandstorm, or hail will have a terrain.
Yeah, so like there's
Except
so many
dark.
different like combinations you could do there and like make your team so much more like intricate. So yeah, steel doesn't have one either, but there's a cool steel move now where you can basically take like it's a move that basically gets rid of a terrain, which is really interesting. And it does a lot of damage.
That's interesting though. So they don't have like this darkness terrain. They don't have one for poison. None for steel.
No. From the top of my head, I can say that there's psychic terrain, like misty terrain, which is for fairies. They have electric terrain, and they have like a grassy terrain, and all these terrains do different things. And they're pretty much game changers. One example I can give is that in competitive, hypnosis, sleep powder, those kind of things are so prevalent and so annoying because if you go to sleep, it's just a pain. And so with electric terrain, you don't have to worry about that because when electric terrain is up, no Pokemon can go to sleep. So like these terrains have these different effects that are more intricate than just a rain. Like, okay, rain is on the field. A decreased fire move, increased water moves, increased accuracy for certain things. Like electric terrain will make sure you never sleep, which is a totally different mechanic, and increase electric moves, which is standard. And so seeing these different things really makes it more complex, and I think adds to that gameplay aspect of it. Again, this is really prevalent for doubles. I don't know how prevalent for singles it would be, because like in a singles format, you're 3v3, and in all honesty, you really want to just steamroll the other team. You don't really want to take time to set up, because at the same time they could set up, and it's a lot harder to put all this up. Whereas in doubles, there's so many different things you could do, and I think this is really meant for doubles, which is the format that that Pokemon uses for competitive play. So yeah, the new moves are great, the new Pokemon are great, and I think $15 is worth it. And now I just want to move on to the story aspect of it. So one thing that's kind of a bummer is the story and how you interact, and like they make the DLC available. So say you just bought the game, right? Sorry about the coughing. Say you just bought the game a week ago and you're done with like 3 gyms. You can go access the DLC right now. And at the same time, say you beat the game when it came out, you have like 15 million level 100s in your party. you can go to the island and do it at the same time. And so one thing that was really hyped, that I was hyped for, was that there were some like journalists who got early access to the game, and they said that the levels were scaling dynamically, and that the reason that the Pokemon they were encountering were level 60 was because that's the highest level Pokemon in their party. And what people took that to mean was that if you had something higher than level 60, that's what you'd encounter, but that was not the case, unfortunately. The Pokemon are pretty much level capped at 60. Some trainers go into the high 60s. In one part of the story, there's a level 70. But other than that, if you beat the game, you have candies, which you should have more than enough of. You're going to find it a cakewalk, as you would with...
So some journalist just wanted fake news out there. He just wanted to get his shares and link clicks.
So I think there's a little bit of that and a little bit of Pokemon itself being deceptive. Because when the journalist asked a Nintendo representative as to why the Pokemon were level 60, the representative said that the Pokemon were level 60 because that is the highest level Pokemon in your party, right? So it was very... it was very not shady, but like open to interpretation. And the way he stated that made it seem that there would be dynamic leveling. But that's not the case. There's no dynamic leveling. The highest level Pokemon you will encounter will be level 80 in the wild. And it's this huge Wailord. It's like massive. It's insane. Unfortunately, I beat it. I didn't even look at the level. I kind of one-shot it because I had level 100s with me. And they were EV trained and everything. So pretty easy to OHKO a level 80 Wailord with that. And yeah, it hasn't respawned, and I'm kind of sad because I want to catch it. So maybe I just have to wait a little bit. But overall story, I would say I took it easy. Like, I wasn't trying to rush through it. I was trying to enjoy it. Took me maybe 2.5 hours, 3 hours tops. And again, I will say, if you start this like from like Route 1 and like you're new to the game, it may take you longer based on how the levels scale. Because essentially what you do is you perform 3 tasks in a dojo. After those 3 tasks, you are awarded a legendary Pokemon. And that Pokemon is Kubfu. What you do with Kubfu from then on is you basically go on this adventure on the island, which I think was a cool story, right? And you have to go to this spot on the island, like a scenic spot, and then explore it with Kubfu. And increase your friendship level with Kubfu, because that's your task. Make Kubfu and you like best friends. And so the bummer of that is that you only have to visit one of the locations, and as soon as you go there, you're going to be best friends with him. But you can take your time, enjoy it, explore the island with it, and then you get to go to a tower. The towers are interesting because you have 2 different options. You have a tower of water and a tower of darkness. I think most people will go with water just because that's the interesting type. We've had a lot of fighting dark types before, but we've only had one fighting water, and that was Keldeo, which is illegal to use, right? And Kubfu and Urshifu will be completely legal.
Isn't Poliwrath a water fighting?
Oh yeah, you're right. It just wasn't in the game, so I didn't even think about that. But yeah, so Poliwrath is also water fighting. I don't know how viable that is competitively. Haven't really looked at the stats.
Probably not at all.
Yeah, so Urshifu is great, and the tower is a challenge if you don't use candies. I will say that, because you get the Kubfu at level 10, and then when you're going up the tower, the Pokemon in the tower are mid-60s. So you're going to have to do a lot of grinding if you don't have the candies to just even enter the tower. And then the final match is your Kubfu against the dojo sensei. His name is Mustard. His Kubfu, right? And his Kubfu is level 70. So you're going to have to do grinding to get your Kubfu to level 70 if you want to have a chance. Why does the dojo
master have to Kubfu and not an Urshifu?
It just for like story's sake, honestly.
Okay.
So you get to the tower.
I'm about to say this master ain't no master. He is scrub.
So the thing is, when you enter the tower, you're not allowed to have anything in your party except a Kubfu. And so I feel like if they gave him an Urshifu, you'd kind of be like, it would be really hard to beat an Urshifu given the stat increases versus your Kubfu, which is like pre-evolution. And I think that'd just be too hard of a challenge for people. Unless you go to level 100, which I did not do. I didn't grind, obviously. I didn't have so many candies. I just kind of got to the same level and started battling him. Then I beat him. And then at the end of the tower, what you get is the ability to evolve your Kupfu. And so it evolves into Urshifu, either fighting water or fighting dark. Then after that challenge is done, you get to challenge Mustard again, where he also has an Urshifu of the opposite tower. So if you went to water, then he'll have the dark one, and then vice versa. And then you get to challenge him again at the end at the dojo. Pretty straightforward battle. I didn't really use anything amazing in the battle. I tried to make sure I didn't have too many level 100s, but I probably did just because, just in case. So yeah, interesting battle. You don't really get to do much more than that afterwards. You're basically done. I will say, this is very important. You need to have beaten the game to be able to make your Urshifu Gigantamax, because you basically your rival Hop will come to the island, and then you go on this excursion, which is another mini story, to get this honey that is needed to put into the stew to make your Urshifu Dynamax. And so that is like the main story of the game. Overall, it took me like 2.5 hours. Pretty interesting, pretty fun, a little more involved than the main story. I feel like they're learning with what they're trying to do, because it wasn't very linear. You're actually doing more things rather than just listening to a bunch of dialogue, and that made it interesting for sure. And so yeah, I like the story aspect. Urshifu as a legendary, I like. You can use him in competitive. He's actually one of the very few legendaries that is not at the end of a Pokédex. If you look at the Galar Isle of Armor Pokédex, Urshifu is right in the middle. I think like number 110, which is like very interesting to me because normally they're at the end. And yeah, overall, pretty fun story. After the story was done, I just stayed on the island more to just catch Pokemon. I'm still in the middle of trying to complete that Pokédex and get some of the items you get after you complete it. So that's where I am currently. I'm just trying to complete that, and then
you get new items if you complete this new Pokédex.
Yeah, so you get you get a crown, which is kind of funny, and then you get a mark charm, which marks are an interesting new thing in the game. Just a brief summary of what a mark is. Essentially, there's a percentage chance that a Pokemon you catch will have a certain kind of mark that gives it a characteristic. So, for example, say you were catching a Pokemon very early in the morning, there's a chance it may have a mark called the early riser. And the marks are really just like a fan thing. Doesn't really add anything to the Pokemon other than like a certain thing before you send it out. So for example, after you beat the Galar like championship stuff and you send out a Pokemon who was in your party, it'll say go Cinderace, the Galar champion, right? So basically what a Pokemon with a mark will do is have some kind of characteristic to it. So like say you caught a Milotic early in the morning and it had a mark, and the mark was early riser. So when you send it out in a battle, it'll be like go Milotic, the early riser. So just like a little interesting, unique identifier for a Pokemon that they added, and the mark charm you get will make it more likely for you to find those marked Pokemon. Other than that, those are the two rewards you get. Nothing amazing, but definitely something for completionists to get.
I know you wish they gave like a ×2 shiny charm or something so that you could get your Cinderace.
Oh man, I'm still working on that. Again, like it's insane. I will say that one of the bad things about the Isle of Armor right now is that there's so many people playing the game. Like the intercom system, like the link trades, the surprise trades, the raid battles online system is like completely messed up. I'm not finding any online raids. It's kind of ridiculous. Yeah, it's like completely messed up. And
what if you go back to the regular island?
I tried doing that too, and like it just backlogged. It's not working. So hopefully they fix that. It's gonna be some time before they do, I think, but who knows? We'll see how it goes.
Interesting. I hope they fix it soon. That sounds like a big thing, though. I'm sure they'll fix it as soon as possible.
Yeah, and the other thing they added, again, like a security concern thing, was not really a concern, but you know when you do a link trade, you have to set 4 digits. Now what they have you do is basically, it's 8 digits now. So it's a little more complex because people were complaining that the 4-digit one was kind of too short and that sometimes they would accidentally link up with someone that they didn't want to. So That's interesting. I like how they did that. They added that to it.
Right. So in this game, you're able to, since you can connect your game to the internet, you can trade with people. You can access their battles, these multiplayer type battles, via a link code if you want to secure it to just your friends. And previously, this link code was just 4 digits, and so that's 10 digits to the 4th power, number of possibilities. And so with the amount of players that are playing, if enough people are setting link codes, there definitely is going to be an overlap. So I don't understand why they didn't do like digits and letters, because then that's 26 to the 4th times 10 to the 4th number of possibilities, which is plenty. But I guess 8 digits is okay too. 10 to the 8th power number of combinations, which will make it a lot less likely that people will choose the same code.
Yeah, and again, I think the system is overloaded right now. We'll see what they do from there. There's one other thing on the island which I think is interesting that people may want to do. Well, 2 things. One is the Diglett Quest, and 2 is the Max Soup. Just want to cover the Diglett Quest first. Essentially, what you're getting is you get to the island, and there's a bunch of these Alolan Diglets around the island, 150 of them. And your objective is to identify them and just find them. And then they'll go back to this trainer at the beginning of the island who has a love for these Diglets, and they all got like loose. So your job is to get them. And it's a pretty cool minigame because it's challenging, right? Some of them are hidden in very hard to find places and like in the middle of nowhere. So I really like that quest. I'm still doing it. It's actually kind of hard trying to like find where they are, and it's fun. It's like a little mini game they added, and I like it. It's definitely more challenging than some of those like mini games in the gyms and stuff. So that was fun, and you get good rewards for it. You get Alolan forms of Pokemon, and you get like the hidden ability Alolan forms. So you get some good stuff in there. For example, I think for getting 60 of the Diglett, you get a Raichu that's Alolan, but its ability is Surge Surfer, which again builds into that whole terrain aspect. Basically, with Surge Surfer, your Raichu's speed doubles. So that's going to be like one fast boy, especially in electric terrain. So they give you some cool rewards. And overall, yeah, the Diglett Quest is fun. And then the one last thing that I like is the Gigantamax Soup. So what you basically have the opportunity to do is go around the island and collect these mushrooms, which when you collect 3, you can make a soup, and that soup will allow a Pokemon to Gigantamax. And that includes the Galar starters and the Kanto starters. So we already saw G-Max Charizard. Now you can see G-Max Venusaur, G-Max Blastoise, in addition to, of course, your Rillaboom, your Inteleon, and your Cinderace, and Urshifu, for example. I think that's a really cool aspect, and I like what they're doing with it, because it makes it easier to like get those Pokemon. Otherwise, you have to wait for raids and the system is all backed up. Now you have more control over that, and it's easier for you to, like, say you have a shiny Corviknight and you really want it to be Gigantamax, you can do that now. There's like no need for you to go find another shiny, which has to be a G-Max in a raid den. Like, it's really hard for you to control getting something like that, especially with the catch rates. They're insanely low. Like, I found one and like it didn't even give me a wiggle. It was insane. So yeah, it's overall, yeah, I enjoyed Isle of Armor. Great time. I'm still going on it just to complete the Pokédex. And after I'm done with that, it's time to like build a new team, because new rules are effective July 1st. But yeah, other than that, I enjoyed it. Worth the $15 for sure for me.
Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. That has been any final thoughts? Or do you think you summarized it pretty well?
I think I summarized it pretty well. There's maybe some minor things I left out, but again, I'm excited for the Crown Tundra, which is the second part, which will come out in December.
That one seems like it's going to be a lot more fun.
Oh, yeah, they're going to add legendaries. They're going to add, like, new stories. They're going to add, like, this double battle tournament, which, again, is pushing VGC. And, like, you get to fight against Leon and the Dragon Gym leader at the same time and stuff. So that stuff looks amazing. definitely looking forward to it. Yeah.
Awesome, dude. Well, that has been Sauger's review of the Isle of Armor DLC. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, and for sure. And keep a lookout on our socials, as I'll be starting a YouTube channel where I will post some of the gameplay and give some commentary as well. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, that's all for now. Thank you for listening.